Hello fellow crafters, I'm Karen, and in this video I'll be showing you how to make this paper butterfly and flower wreath out of pages from a book. The task at hand for this video is to make a paper wreath, so we'll be making some paper flowers and paper butterflies, which will then be glued onto a rope-wrapped wire frame. All the tools and materials that you'll need for this are up on the screen, starting with our 16-inch wire frame and the rope that we'll be using to wrap that frame. Mine is about a 1/4 inch in diameter. I will also be using some paper punches to make this process go significantly faster, so I have 2 different butterfly sizes and 2 different flower sizes that I'll be making use of. You'll also need a book that you're willing to destroy, as well as a hot glue gun for assembly. The butterflies that I'm going to be making are no bigger than this one right here, which I made as a test, and it's layers of cardstock and our actual book paper, which we'll get to later, but my concern was that in trying to put it onto the wire frame, that we would struggle with trying to cover all of the frame and with actually being able to glue these effectively in place. You're sort of locked into where you can glue them onto the frame. So as I was thinking about those 2 issues, I decided that I would wrap the frame in rope, which I've done for a different wreath before in more of a pattern so that you can see part of the frame. But in this case, I'm just going to be wrapping it all the way around. We'll secure it with glue as we go, so we want to make sure we're securing it really well at the beginning, and then just occasionally as we go through, just to make sure it stays secure. Once we have it wrapped in once we have it wrapped in the rope, then we can go ahead and add all of the paper things on top of that. As you watch this take place, I'm going to be reflecting back on the completed process, and the biggest thing that I noticed was that it took a surprising amount of rope to do this. So don't underestimate your rope. You can try to calculate it if you want, or just buy a lot of excess, and just be aware that it is kind of rough on the fingers, so it's going to take a little bit of time to do, and your fingers might feel a little sore at the end. One of the things I learned right away at the beginning was that I was pulling the rope too tight and was actually squishing the wire frame together. So I actually have a narrower part that I just centered at the top. But I did have to correct that as I was going further on. I ended up with a little bit of sort of a warp in the frame, which may have been a result of that being too tight at the beginning. I'm not sure. It doesn't really impact anything in the long run, so I'm not going to worry about it. But just be aware that you can impact the condition of the frame. As I was working on this, was gluing approximately every 3rd loop of rope. So I would prepare each loop in groups of 3 and then glue on that 3rd loop, then prepare the next set. That seemed to work pretty well, and I was watching as I went to make sure that it was sort of tight on the inside of the curve and looser or more spread out on the outside of the curve, and that's just to make sure that my rope didn't get angled as I went. It allowed it to stay sort of perpendicular to the frame. And then lastly, I would just say as I got close to the end, I took the end of the rope and just continued it and made it into a handle, which will be used for hanging it, and then I was able to just glue the other end of it on the back and call it a day. The book that I'll be destroying today is a copy of Les Mis, and I selected it partly because I have 3 copies of it, and partly because it's a nice big book and then I only have to destroy one over time. It also has that sort of off-white coloring in the pages as opposed to a brighter white, which I think will look better in the wreath overall. So to make my flowers, which I'm going to do first, I'm going to be using this. It's almost clover-shaped, but it's petal-shaped flower, 4 petals, and I'm going to punch these, one out of a colored piece of paper, one out of the book, and then one of these tiny little ones, which is just going to act like a centerpiece, or like just the center of the flower. So each flower is going to be 3 layers, the colored one, the book one, which will be offset a little bit, the tiny one on top. We'll glue them. We can bend the petals a little bit so they don't look very flat. And then we'll just make a whole stockpile of them and then attach them to the wreath. Now that I've got my stockpile of flowers, it's time to hot glue them to the wreath. So to do this, I just want to keep two things in mind. I'm going to be offsetting the center point of the flowers to the left, which is just a design choice. I didn't want to center them at the bottom. And then as I'm placing them, I want to make sure that they're wrapping around and being well distributed among the three colors. Since I only decided to do three colors, I have to kind of make sure they don't end up in little clumps of one color here, one color there. I want them to look very diverse. The idea here with the butterflies is the same as it was with the flowers. We're going to be stacking 2 layers of paper instead of 3, and the colored paper is going to be on the back with the book paper on the front. We will take a round object like a hot glue stick or a pencil to roll the inside wings in a little bit just so that you can see the colored wings behind it. And while I am using 2 punches again, they're just to make 2 different size butterflies with the same method as opposed to stacking them on top of each other. Here's what the assembly process looks like. We add a little strip of hot glue down the body of the butterfly and put the book piece on top of it, lining everything up. And then fold the wings up a little bit around the body. And then we take the hot glue stick or pencil or whatever to roll the wings a little bit. And that gives us a nice 3-dimensional butterfly. The same thing applies with the little ones, except we can only put a little tiny dot of hot glue on there. But we want to line those up, fold up the edges, and then roll up the wings. And you want to be kind of careful with the book paper so that you don't have any tearing. I did deal with a little bit of that as I was doing these at the point where the top and bottom wings meet. I tried to split in the middle on some of the bigger butterflies. Whoops. And then with these little ones, I've found that it also helps to just give a little extra lift to the book bit so that the paper shows through better from the bottom. And now, just like we did with the flowers, it's time to hot glue the butterflies to the wreath. So we want to follow the same general principles. We want to spread out the colors. We want to sort of round the wreath. So we want to have some of the butterflies on the outer and inner edges of the wreath. And we just, generally speaking, want to start with the larger ones and fill into some of the smaller ones. You can put butterflies on your flowers, you can put them anywhere around, and it will be nice to have a little bit of the twine showing through in intentional spots, so I'm going to be doing that as well. Thanks for supporting Tickled Fancy Crafting by watching this video. This content is available on YouTube and Rumble, so click the like or Rumble button to let me know that you enjoyed the content, and subscribe to see new Tickled Fancy Crafting videos in your feed. If you'd like to be informed directly about the content, ring the notification bell on YouTube or adjust your notification settings on Rumble. Comment with crafts that you would like to see in the future, and remember, you can make this.